which is quite the surface of the sun. And the photosphere is really nice. You know, you see the sunspots and the granulation and whatnot. But in the chromosphere, things are moving very, very quickly, and you can see changes over very short periods of time in a matter of minutes. You know, you can see, you know, prominences and things like that. So hydrogen alpha scopes are dedicated to that hydrogen alpha wavelength. And so it isolates the movements of hydrogen within the chromosphere. And if anybody else wants to add to that, I'm sure you can.
No, okay, thanks. That was very good.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, we're live on YouTube. Welcome to the DVAA Astrophotography meeting.
Okay. So for tonight, let me do this.
There it is.
Okay. Leave that up so I can see what you're seeing. So tonight, okay, do it here. First of all, are there any new members tonight? Nelson, you said just the first time you had video.
Yeah, I've been a member of DVAA for a number of years.
Yeah. This would be more not so much new club members, but new to this meeting. Sorry.
Yeah, I've looked at your recorded meetings. That's how I learned about Lou. So yeah, I might have to leave early tonight, so I'm sorry about that.
No, that's okay. That's okay. Well, welcome to
Thank you.
the live version of the meeting.
Thanks.
Yeah, welcome.
And what you had showed a picture of the your camera set up with the with M57. What type of equipment are you using and stuff? Maybe just give just a real brief overview of your sort of background.
Well, let me if I can share a picture from a long time ago on film. Oops, somebody else is sharing. I can't do that. Okay.
I can stop.
Okay, anyway, I got the LX200 8-inch back when Yakutaki was around, actually before it. So it's an old classic. It still works. The capacitors haven't died yet, and I'm going to replace them soon. But it's a nice telescope. I deforked it, and I have an HEQ5, which is fairly good, and it's an equatorial, not a fork. And it presents good things and learning things. I sort of like the nebulosities. You know, the other night when the dew hit us, I thought this is a wonderful night. I think it was last Tuesday. And it was amazing that there was going to be no clouds. So I go out there and sure enough, after about 45 minutes, I was wondering why things got blurry. And sure enough, it was dew. So that same night, I was trying to go for M16, which is fascinating to me, and there was no luck. It was lower on the. It was not near the zenith, so it was sketchy even at that point. I'm in Abington, so the light pollution is like soup. My what I was going to show you was I think it was M42 taken on film, piggybacked on my LX200, and it's not a great picture, but it's film, and I think I went to Lake Nakamixon that night with my wife to take pictures of it. And I have some nice pictures of Yakutaki as well. But that was an amazing comet.
Yeah, definitely. Well, we can when we do the little show and tell, we can go back to those.
Okay.
When I'm not hogging up the screen here.
Okay.
Nelson, you and I are neighbors.
Pardon?
I said, you and I are neighbors.
I'm right on Susquehanna.
Okay, I'm over here in Willow Grove near the Turnpike interchange.
Okay.
I grew up in Abington.
Yeah, I'm from Ambler to
Okay.
Abington.
Yeah, it's soupy here.
Yeah.
Portal 7.
That's cool. And it looks like there's a Evan and well, Tim just dropped off. Evan, are you a new member?
I
I'm
went,
not a new club member, a new attendee. I shouldn't say member. I'll try to stick to the script. A new attendee.
I attended the STAR party this past Sunday.
Okay, and are you new to this meeting?
Yes.
Okay, cool. And what is your background? Are you involved in astrophotography or just looking to learn? Do you have equipment that you're using or?
I do some astrophotography. I don't have much in the way of proper equipment. I have a C6 Nexstar with the Aldaz mount. I have a ZWO ASI 585. I'm able to get away with the Aldaz mount by taking like 1 second exposures and filling up an entire hard drive basically, and then I use serial to derotate and align everything with the stars, and I can get pretty decent photos with the drifty Nexstar mount, but it's fun.
Well, that's good. You're in good company with there are a number of people on the call have done well, you can talk to John Liengruber, who was doing it with using a Dob without any kind of equatorial platform initially, right?
Yeah, same camera, the 585. It's really fast. So you're in good company. I love it.
That's great. Well, welcome to the meeting. So, as far as show and tell stuff, before the meeting started, a few people, Richard and I'm sorry. I'm just trying to get my desktop. If I bring the panel with the people in it, it actually gets a little brighter on my main screen. So sorry about that. But anyway, we'll go back to sort of show and tell in terms of pictures. But what I thought we would start out with is Tom had put together a short presentation on a computer system that he's using for remote control of an 8-inch Meade LXD75 for planetary imaging. So, Tom, is that something you're ready for?
Ready to go. Let me share.
Okay, I'm going to stop sharing and get rid of this. Okay, perfect. And thanks so much for putting this together, Tom. It sounded like when you were chiming in on that thread about the remote systems and stuff like that. It sounded like a great topic that people would want to learn more about.
I figure out where my presentation is actually.
There it is.
Okay, I guess that's full screen. Anyway, Gary saw the picture, the posting I did on the group IO, and they asked me to put together a few slides. I have a bunch of slides, but I can go pretty quickly through it. What I have done, I purchased a mount, a telescope from Rabbi Bidiri. I don't know how old it is, but it's fairly old, and I thought, this would be very nice to take pictures with of planets. That was my intent. And but then it got winter. So a year ago, I was getting into this business, joined this club, and I have spent a few times outside with my dog to take pictures, but he got pretty old pretty quickly, and so this must be a better way to do this. So start putting together this my own system. So this is what I started from, like Gary also mentioned. So it's a 8-inch SCT with ACF graphic optics and UHC optics, and very nice. If you look at the stars, it's all very nice dots. And so it came with its own tripod, and it even had the original Meade Mind electric focuser, so you could just remotely focus without hitting the telescope. And it even had a go-to system, this thing called the Audio Star, where you get a big hand controller, which it worked fine. I even upgraded it, but it's far away from remote, So I thought, okay, let me see what other people have done. And so this is what I wanted to wind up with. Something that's fully computerized. There's some expandability to some standard software. ASCOM is the one that people seem to be using. I wanted to have a hand controller so I can also control it completely from just right next to it if I go on a trip someplace. I want to have a connection to a computer, a cell phone, iPad, everything there is under the sun. I also wanted to have the focuser remote, so I don't have to, go out there to focus when I'm controlling it. And of course, that would be some interface to imaging software that I've already tried a few times, so like SharpCap and Fire Capture. And my intent was planetary imaging. Maybe one day I will try DSO when I swap out the OTA with something else. And there's a lot of backlash also in the drive. It was extremely noisy. So it would be nice if that behaved a little better. So this is what I wound up after I did that. So I have a mount that I removed all the meat stuff off of it, and I put in a controller made by called OnStep. Some of you may have heard. I show you a little bit about it. And so it has a web server. You can do your configuration with computer, Mac, whatever. You can upgrade the software. Has a Bluetooth and Wi-Fi connection for Android hand controller, or you can just use the iPad for Sky Safari for the go-to function. It has an interface, so you can put in a focuser or a filter wheel if you wanted to, and it's a little power distribution part to it. So if you want to do heaters, and you can power it off of standard 12-volt power supply. And the stepper motor is used to upgrade the focuser. So instead of having some DC motor, it has a stepper motor, so you can do it's ASCOM compatible, so you can interface it with software I'll talk about later. I already had a camera that I've tried a few times on planets last winter, and then I also, in order to integrate all that, I have this small computer that if you go to a doctor's office, you see this station that the doctors pull around, nurses, that they take all the data. Well, on the back of it hangs this small HP computer. It's a real beauty if you open it up. It's just how it's all made. But they upgrade those things very quickly, and you can get one. Like I think I paid like $150 for it. It's a powerful computer. And so I attach it to the mount. It has a USB connection to the OnStep, so you can control the mount. It runs the ASCOM platform, so you can try Nina or even PhD later on. You run the imaging software directly on it and store the images. And the whole thing can be then connected through Microsoft Remote Desktop. So being on the same Wi-Fi network is the first. I guess eventually it could be made in the field, but I didn't really intend that for that. Maybe one day. Anyway, I mentioned OnStep. You can do it this way. You can buy the components. There are hobbyists out there to build their own 3D printers. And these boards that they use can be adapted for mount control for all the axes you need, a focuser and so forth. And you attach these stepper motors. And there's this guy out there, Howard Hutton, who has his own wiki page, and people are building these things left and right. But that way, if you like playing around with electronics and update software and so forth. But I decided that life is too short for that. I purchased one from a company called Terrence, and it's a Chinese company that put together this kit that is specifically for this mount. But the mount is a copy of some other mount, and so this kit would be adaptable for other ones. And I think they have specifically configured the configuration. Basically, is for the worm gear and the number of teeth you have. So if you don't have that, then you can, through a web server, you can make those adjustments, based on the reductions you have. So you get this kit, the motors, you get some gears with the rubber belts, which makes it really nice and quiet when it drives, and you very quickly attach it to the mount, and it works beautifully. You also get a hand controller that goes with it. I think I bought this one from AliExpress. The other one was like $160. So altogether, I spent $200 on this particular hardware part. And this is what it looks like on the mount. You got a little control box here. The wires for the motors. The motors are attached to one for the RA, one for the declination. And you can see a little bit detail what it looks like. It just basically screws on, and it uses the existing screws to attach the motor. All you have to do is adjust these screws to get the right kind of tension. The worm gear is still the same. This wheel is driven, so there's a bit of a big backlash still there, but that can be adjusted somewhat. The mount, Joe saw it in my sunroom. It's just dead quiet. It's beautiful. Unlike the original Meade, that was like a coffee grinder. So this is what it looks like. Attached. I 3D printed some brackets for these things, so they attach on the legs. And here's some little details just about the box itself. This is what it looks like. It's about the size of, I don't know, 2 cigarette boxes. And it's powered by 12 volts. And you have the USB control wire for the computer. You have the hand controller can be hooked up in here, or guide camera, and they also can control the camera shutter if you wanted to. From the other side, it has a Wi-Fi Bluetooth antenna, connections to the focuser and rotator. All you have to do is plug in the driver. So I use one of those with like $10, plug it into the board. And then the 2 connections to the axes to drive the scope. From the other side, it has some 12-volt outputs and 5-volt outputs, so you can put a dew heater or so. In the back, it attaches with screws, and it has a little bit of a window and a battery to store the settings. So if you turn it off, you remember certain things or the configuration. But software can be downloaded. I don't know if I ever need to do that, but there is that possibility. The focuser was like this. I just open up the shell on the bottom. So it has the friction focuser and that little DC motor and that hand controller. You could control it, moving in and out. It has a I think 13 millimeter drive distance over which you can move. So I took off the motor and the brackets, and I 3D printed this bracket and attached the NEMA 14 motor that just plugs into the control box. And there is, of course, the hand controller, tune focuser, so you get this coarse movement, and then you can do a fine movement. And when it starts in the middle, so you have a 6 millimeter either way to do fine focusing. Yeah, I don't know if anybody, just the one backup slide, if anybody's interested in this ASCOM platform and how the OnStep works. This is the box that I was showing you. It's got Bluetooth, and it has its own web server. You can talk to it with a Wi-Fi, or even supports encoders if your original scope came with them. Then it will talk to the telescope mount, a rotator, a focuser, and other things, switches, if you want to know what position the scope is in, parked. And then it has a USB through which you can run something like a Sky Planet, Sky Planetarium, some software, Stellarium, so forth. I've tried some of them and they all seem to work fine. Or I also did the same thing with Bluetooth with a tablet. The go-to works very nice. After you do the star alignment, it shows up right in the middle. And yeah, so I haven't really done much astrophotography. If I didn't want to do the remote, I just instead of this, I just put my laptop, which runs the same thing. So if I just want to take it someplace else, or if it's nice and warm. So I have done just some moon, photography a little bit just to see how it works, make sure it's tracking. The hand control is very nice because it duplicates all the functions that the computer can do. So it's a little thing. It fits my hand. You can do alignment from there and go-tos, and shows you what's available and what's visible that day or that night. So it's quite nice, for $40. And with a steal, you can also control the focuser and also the filter wheel if you wanted to. So it has that built in. And the Bluetooth is very nice. If you just take it to the field, you can just take your iPad and set it up and do everything there. You don't have to drag along anything else. So I'm looking forward to being able to set it outside. And I've already obviously tested it. I can hook up to it through this another computer, like another laptop, and Microsoft remote desktop software is very nice, because what you see is the exact same as the HP that's sitting on the mount. It fills in the screen, and it's very fast. So it looks like you act like you connected to your local computer. So with the Wi-Fi. So anyway, I'm enjoying it. I'm looking forward. Actually, I got up the other day at 4 o'clock in the morning, and I see Saturn is up there. So if I get motivated, and if we ever get a decent weather, like we used to have, like last September or whatever, it was just like 30 days in a row. I got really spoiled by it every day. It was just perfect.
Yeah.
Clear. So now it's awful. I think we had like a week altogether since the beginning of the year. So I have a DOPS now that I have the secretarial platform if I want to just take a quick look to show at a star party. And I did take it out to the what was that called? The Springs.
The clinic?
Not the clinic, up in the mountains. I just dropped my name. The spring. What's what?
Cherry Spring.
Yeah, Cherry Spring. I took it out there and I play around with it, but I took way too much equipment. I was like all over the place. Need to just do one thing at a time. But anyway, been a lot of fun, and I probably duplicated something that people can just buy off the shelf with ASR Air, but I had some fun. I'm an engineer, and I like to dabble with a little bit with electronics and 3D printing and watch YouTubes and see what people have done. So
it's great. So that on step, that controller, is that, like you said, they had a kit specifically for the LXD75. I assume they support other mounts too, if you wanted to do a similar conversion.
yeah, and I think the LXD75 is similar, or a copy of Dresser and ECOS, whatever, all these other ones that copied each other. So for those, I think it would be still just plug and play. And but if you have something a little bit different, I think they have other options. It's probably meant for upgrading an existing old telescope that, like in my case, if you already have something running, then if it works for you, why not? You get the advantage of being interfaceable to this ASCAM platform, so then everything kind of plugs in very nicely. Like, for example, I can take a sharp cap or fire capture and hook up the motor to the drive to it, so you get these little 4 arrows, and you can also set up the focuser, so during imaging you can do auto guiding. You can guide on the surface, or on the planet. So I mean, I don't know if that's necessary, but because it's, it can guide by itself pretty well for what we need, but yeah, it has the capability. So it's very simple. People build these things on their own and they have a lot of fun. There's a huge amount of discussion and complaints, and I said, no, I'm sorry, I'm too old for this. And so this is very plug and play. I mean, it was just amazing.
That's nice, especially the compatibility with all the other applications and stuff. Because
Yeah,
in the diagram you showed Nina, you showed, basically with it being ASCOM compliant, you can pretty much hook whatever you want to control it. And if you don't want to do that, you said the hand controller is very full featured.
Yeah, you just plugs in into the back underneath, the bottom of the box, and you just control it from there. It has all the functions, and also if you hook up your phone with it, cell phone at Android only, then it has an application, hand control applications. So you get a little bit of bigger screen, and it shows up nice and red, and you can do star alignment, and so the hand controller duplicates that, but it has a little smaller window, so you probably use it mostly to, just move the mount a little bit here and there. But it's nice to have a hand controller, as you're looking through the eyepiece, so you can nudge it a little bit here and there.
Yeah, yeah.
I had a question, Tom.
Yeah.
I know you've come a long way. This is really great. Thanks for sharing this. And I know when you first kind of were getting this set up, if I recall that it was kind of jammed or it wasn't moving. How did you figure out what was the problem?
I'm still at that point. That would be the next thing. I mean, the motor seemed to be strong enough to get through that. And so, until I actually start tracking over a long time, because the binding is only a certain place, then I think I'm okay. But eventually I'd love somebody to take it apart. I already looked up all the bearings, and something is rubbing in the wrong way. And it's not always, I took it all apart and I rotate the axes and it's all smooth and oil it and then leave it alone for 10 minutes, come back and it's sticking again. So I don't know what is going on.
Okay.
That would make it really, really nice, but I'm afraid to start taking big wrenches at it.
No, definitely.
Yeah, I think one of you guys showed me a video where how you take it apart, and I looked at it and it's like, oh, okay, just take a wrench and turn it. Take the cap off of the polar scope, and take the polar scope out and just turn it, and the whole thing comes out. Take the screws off. I was afraid to muscle it like that. I don't know if that was forced to go in together one time and not to be ever removed, or am I doing something wrong? And so I'm a little scared, because if I mess that up, then the rest of it is useless. And unfortunately, it's the RA axis, it's the one that you read most.
Oh, yeah.
So anyway, that's one day figure out how to do that.
Cool. Nice,
That's really neat. Neat approach to solving a problem. And then you'll eventually do this for remote. You were talking, I guess, at one point about your daughter is she down in Texas or something like that, or someone being remote that maybe you could set up there?
You could, but I don't think this is easily maintainable outside. I was most thinking about the Sea Star. Put a little enclosure there.
I see. Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
There is some software that's not ZWO that allows you to remotely control it. That would be kind of cool, but no, I just borrowed it a few times and enjoyed it.
Yeah, that makes sense. Cool. Well, thanks so much for putting that together. That's a very interesting project.
Yeah, if somebody's interested.
Yeah. Hey, Tom, could I ask you a question? Are the worm gears matching on the right ascension and declination?
Yeah, they're probably the same. Yeah, I took them apart and they look the same. I don't know.
Yeah. I'm wondering if maybe one of the worm gears is bent. And if it is, maybe try swapping the right ascension and declination worm gears.
No. When I was messing with it, the worm was out completely. I removed it. I took it away from the mount, so it's just rotating on its own.
And it still gets stuck. It's still jammed. Oh, I see.
Okay.
Yeah. The worm is you can make it some adjustments, and it has a little bit of a backlash, but I think for planetary it's fine once it starts leaning, towards west or east, so that you have a
Yeah.
constant tension. Probably not an issue. I mean, it's not.
Yeah, you could solve that with the counterweights.
Yeah, we can't wait. So I, like I said, I haven't done anything really serious, and so we'll see what else I will discover. But I did it on the moon, and it worked just like I was hoping. And fire capture, and then the idle guiding, I'm not sure how that would work. I haven't really played around with it. I can control the amount from the fire capture and sharp cap, and also the focuser works fine because of LASCOM. But to actually outer guide on an object like Saturn or Jupiter, I have not tried. I'm assuming that would work, but I don't know. Anyway, story will continue.
Yeah, you can keep us updated as you go further down the path.
Yeah, there's a lot of people have. If you go to one of these groups, there is a group for OnStep, and people are upgrading all sorts of. In fact, there is they have a gallery of all the things people have done. I mean, from a dome and complete big telescopes that running off OnStep, all kind of mounts that I don't recognize. People are really proud of what they have done, and I'm not really that handy to start soldering and things like that. Plus, I'm living in Drexel Hill, so what can you see here?
Yeah. Very nice. Well, thank you. Thank you again for putting that together.
Thanks.
Yeah, right, Tom.
I was going just by hand show you this. Here's a controller.
Oh, okay. Yeah, small. Yeah.
The display.
And then you said that has a built-in database and everything?
Yeah, you can. There's a database. That's it's coming off the control box, I'm sure. So here's the controller itself. I just 3D printed this bracket that snaps on one of the legs. So, same thing for the computer. It snaps on. I have another bracket that computer screws on, and then you can snap it on the leg. And same thing with the battery. So it's all sitting there.
And you 3D printed all those, right, Tom?
Yeah, I just design them. I play around with the 3D design program, and not too complicated. But one of the things I found out that you should not print a PLA if you're living in hot weather. Stop it bending.
Steve is laughing. I see Steve.
Like
You muted, Steve.
I printed this, without the supports here. I don't know if you can see that. And I think almost fell off. My sunroom is 95 degrees. So I put in these supports, right? So it snaps on harder. But then today I say, hey, where is it? Well, it slid down because it loose. I'll try the
Same thing happened to me.
Yeah.
So yeah, PLA is not good out in the sun.
Yeah, I'll try Veggie, but
Put a Velcro strap underneath of it and it won't slide down.
yeah, exactly.
That's right. Wait,
Or
what about
or
bubble gum?
use PLA plus.
Yeah, it is PLA plus, but I can put a Velcro right underneath here, right in one spot, snap it on, and so it won't slide down. It won't fall off, but it just gets loose. Anyway, that's more fun.
Exactly. So I know the weather hasn't been cooperative for imaging, but I know there are a few people out there who have been
Last year.
playing around. Rich, you had that your M57?
No, that was Nelson.
Oh no, Nelson had that. I'm sorry. Nelson's gone for a bit. He'll be back. You had the moon.
Yes.
You mind showing that again to the group?
Okay.
This was from the Star Party, right?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, we actually had a little bit of clear skies. That was great.
That is good. I'm glad that worked out.
Yeah.
So I wasn't able to use the Ioptron, but I ended up using my 150 to 600 millimeter lens on a full frame mirrorless camera. I did just a little bit of editing with the Canon editing program, and it came out kind of nice.
And that's a single exposure, you said.
Yes, one exposure.
Wow,
Very good.
that's impressive.
60th of a second, f11 and ISO 100.
Good.
That's 600 millimeters all the way
Yes.
out.
Yes.
Yeah, it's like as your camera's a telescope, man.
Yeah, it is.
Well, I may end up buying a Vixen dovetail bar mount so that I can go ahead and even put this on the Ioptron.
Mm,
Yeah.
that's good.
So that was like my first effort, and it just so happens I got up early, went to the church service, came home, took my wife down to Newark, Delaware, went from Newark, Delaware, back up to Wilmington, visited my son's in-laws for a while, then got back up to Philadelphia around probably 6:30 or so, 6:30, 7 o'clock. And the adrenaline kicked in. I put as much stuff as I could in the car and headed out to the star party.
That's great.
Paid
Way
off.
to go. Way to go.
So I kind of like the detail down in
Yeah.
here.
Oh yeah.
So, okay.
Very nice.
Yeah,
Yeah.
really nice
Yeah,
definition.
very
Nice contrast.
Yeah.
Yep, Nelson's back, it looks like.
Nelson's back.
Yes.
Really?
I don't know if he's muted or not. Here he is.
There he is.
Sorry about that.
You are back. We were showing some images. Rich showed that moon. You also had the M57 wide field.
Yes, let me get that up. Here we go. Where are you? Oh, there it is. Yeah, it's in Lightroom. And the sky is black, the stars are crisp, and there's a little green smoke ring up there. So I was happy with it.
That's so sweet.
That's cool. It's neat seeing it Richfield like that because it really gives you perspective as to how small it is. I mean, it's not much bigger than the bright star below it, right?
Yeah.
You know, if you I guess that's Vega and that where my I don't see the corner stars though for the ring. That might be one of the corners.
I think it might
Maybe
be one of the
that's
corner
of the corners.
stars.
That's
The
one
other
of the
one's
corners.
above
I
it.
guess-
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess that's the double near it. Maybe. Yeah, I'm not sure. But I mean it's no bigger, it's not much bigger than the star field. It's always one of those things when you're looking for it, you think it's going to pop out at you, but it's quite small.
Yeah.
You got the center star in there.
Yeah.
Little white
Yeah,
dwarf.
look at that.
That's 15th magnitude, correct? Center star?
It's close to
Yeah, it's pretty faint. It puts out a
Yeah.
lot of light in UV, so it's not really very
Yeah.
bright visually at all.
Yeah, it's amazing. I
That's
looked,
amazing. You can see that zooming in.
and
Yeah.
it's actually 1 light year in diameter.
Hmm.
It's 2,200 light years away and 1 light year in diameter. I was amazed at how bright it is, and the white dwarf at the center is putting out immense amounts of ultraviolet, and it fluoresces the atoms in the nebula. So that was pretty amazing.
Were you using any filters? I forget. It doesn't.
Excuse me?
Were you using any filters on this?
A scope?
No,
Yeah, but no filters or anything.
Oh,
no
no
light
filter.
pollution filters or
No.
Okay.
I have a UHC filter that fits inside the camera. I did not use that at that point.
Nice.
Yeah.
nice sharp stars.
Let me show you this one. This is film. This is the early days of me sticking a camera on, pointing it at the sky.
Remember those days?
That's what I'm talking about.
Wow.
Now, I remember when I was about 16, I had a Pentax Spotmatic I got with paper route money, and I remember falling asleep on the the roof of my apartment with the shutter open. And the sun came up, and this was an Ambler, and the skies were much, much better in 1969, 1970. And obviously shot the whole roll because, it
Oh no.
wiped out the whole roll. But that was my history of photography.
So when's this, what year was this done?
This was this particular one was around 1996. When I would fall asleep on the roof, I was developing my own black and white film, and it was black and white back then. But I was shooting the same M42. That's why I happened to mention it.
Yeah.
So,
That's great. Thank you.
yeah, if I find anything else, I will share it.
Yeah. Do that. What else do we have? I know, Tom, you have some stuff up your sleeve. Tom Nolasco.
Oh,
That,
I haven't gotten any.
that posting you did today was fantastic. I happened to catch that when I was kind of like buttoning stuff up for the meeting tonight. I checked the
Thanks.
email. Really beautiful.
Thanks. Just a quick comment to Nelson there. Now, it sounds like we're very similar because about the same time frame, I had a paper out and I saved money to buy a 35 millimeter. It was a Yashica, and I did my own black and white. And I remember your story sounds very familiar.
I'm still doing the black and white, but I'm scanning it, not printing it.
There you go. I got a. Well, you guys probably have seen these. I'll just go. I can go through them quick. This is the coronal rain one that was last month, but this was I've never seen this before when I was imaging, where out of nowhere up in this area.
It's still thumbnails, by the
Oh,
way.
is that you get my?
We're,
you have
we're
that?
looking at there's like 8
Oh,
thumbnails.
okay. Well, that's not good.
It's doing that thing where when you click it, it doesn't show the new one.
Let me see. I can't do that. Okay. Well, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to stop sharing a second, and I will bring up the image, and then I will share it. And this should be better. This should be a little better. Can you see that?
There it is.
Yeah. This was kind of, and I was photographing this up here, this main prominence, just to get, some action. And this bright spot just appears out of the sky and comes falling down, the from the coronal rain type of thing, which I have seen videos of before, but I've never had the good luck to kind of catch one of those. And I barely caught it at the edge of my field of view. I was happy with that.
So what is that? Why is it acting like that?
It's material in the corona that has cooled and condenses just like rain, just like water droplets, like dew out of clouds form rain droplets. It gets heavy and it falls by gravity the same way, but when it falls, it follows the magnetic field lines going down. So it has this stripy type appearance and stuff, but it's just physical particles, really. It's electrons and solid things, and it's just falling out of the corona because it's cooled. A little bit of the corona cooled. So it's pretty wild.
What's the actual time, Tom?
The time for this is probably like an hour and a half, I think. The whole thing, soup to nuts.
Very nice.
So it's sped up a bit. I like making GIFs of the prominences because they're kind of fun to see moving. Now I'm going to try to, let's see if this works. See if I can do this. Oh, let me move this over. Oh, there we go. Can you guys see that?
Yeah. 3 images.
Yeah, 3 images. Okay. This is on June 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. Now, it was lousy at nighttime, I think, those nights, but in the daytime, it was at least it was hazy. But, and this is just I just got this to show like how this filament, this prominence kind of evolves over to a filament eventually. You know, I just kind of rolled on. It was pretty long. A lot of times when you're seeing a prominence like the top image, it'll stay there for a while. It's not going to have a lot of motion to it or anything else. But as each day goes by, you can watch the filament kind of roll on. This is just another shot of the. This was taken right before the coronal rain stuff started on that day.
Oh,
I think is that same prominent, the same filament prominence that Prasad.
No, he got his a couple days later, and I kind of like his better because mine's a straight line. His was really cool because it had an arc to it, so you really got more of a. You could really, I think it really showed the uh, the interaction more. You know, like the transition more. This
Yeah.
you can see you can see how it kind of goes into it, and as a nod to Vince Lanuti, used to call these Philiprom. So as a nod to him. That's what I still call them. I remember up at Cherry Springs, we were looking one time through one of his solar scopes, and but it's kind of neat when you watch the transition go over, if you're fortunate. But if Prasad's, I thought was cooler. This is just
Great shot.
this is a shot on July 4th, and that's the active region on the right there is what I have a video of, and the one on the bottom I have a close up. Well, this is an inverted vision. I kind of like this. This is the way it looks through a solar. If you have a solar scope, this is what it's going to look like. So this is kind of the vision. This is pretty close to what I saw visually. You can see some small flaring, little brighter areas and stuff like that, and the prominences are a little bit darker than the chromosphere over the sun. But I like to invert it because it brings those filaments really 3D, which I like. And I kind of like doing the two-tone business.
like
I mean,
one big orange, you know?
It's all kind of but this is a close-up of the one prom. There's the other one. But then I tried something different for this. You was shooting like in that coronal rain picture, I was taking an image every 2 minutes. And I was looking on YouTube, and this guy was taking images every 15 seconds, but only like 500 frames. And I'm thinking, 500 frames, man, oh man, I stack at least 1,000, let alone, take that many. I usually take 5,000 frames. So I have to do it I go about 25 seconds, but I'm thinking, well, if it's a really good day, maybe I'll shoot 1,000 frames. And I can get 500 good frames out of it and stack those. And I was taking images every 30 seconds versus every 2 minutes. So this is a sequence of actually 196 images over 2 hours and 9 minutes. So it's showing at about 12 frames per second. So it gives a smoother look to it, I think.
Some Cirrus Clouds action.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I learned I typically would do these, they'd all be one color. Either I would blacken out the sun and you'd have the edge, or I would, which is easy to do when I am PPG, or I would have the whole thing just one color with the prominence being the same color as we'll call it, the sun over the chromosphere over the surface. But I kind of like this two-tone look. I'm partial to it right now. It's a fad I'm going through. And but I figured a way how to do it so I can do it. I can batch do this in a GIF because you can't hand do 196 frames and you try to mask everything and make the color one, not the other. But this process now with IMPPG, you can bulk process everything and you can align everything. It takes minutes, literally minutes. And with Photoshop, I finally learned to put myself through the quick YouTube and found how to do a batch process of YouTube because I have 196 frames, and that didn't take very long. And the auto stacker is all batch done, and then I brought it into Lightroom for the final coloring, for the final making the problems white and keeping the sun color. And that was just a batch process. So this whole thing, now they know how to do it. From the biggest time is the stacking the images. That probably takes an hour and a half, but I'm not there. It just runs in the background. But once I'm done that, to get to this point, and I use PPG or whatever it is for the planetary preprocessor thing to make the GIFs. But you can, once they're stacked, you can go from stacked images to this final image in probably half an hour, maybe. So it's not bad. It's pretty quick.
So Tom, you apply a mask like in Photoshop as an example, and then there's a way to then just batch that mask to 190.
Yeah, I mean, for the steps where I use Auto Stacker to stack it, then I use IMPPG to sharpen the image and to invert it, and have the problems come out. So I have that done, and once I do it in there, you can save. I just do it for one image, and you can save what your settings are. And IMPPG, you can just say you can add all your files and just apply that save setting. That's an Excel file that it saves it in, and it just does all the files. It does 196 files in about maybe 35, 40 seconds. And then there's a batch align to make all the images fall exactly in line so that the sun's not jerking around on you. And that takes even less time, probably 25 seconds. And then once that's all done, I'll bring it into Lightroom, and I'll do any little tweaking, adjusting, brightness changes or contrast changes. And I do it just on one image. And with Lightroom, you can just select all the images and say, synchronize the setting with the one you saved, with the one you processed. And it does all those. And then I brought it, this is the part I had to learn, was in Photoshop. There's an easy way to automate. It basically records your step. You tell it you're going to do an action. It's under the actions at the top of the screen. And it just does a record. And every button you push, it just records and saves it. And then that action is saved, and then you can go to the automate under files directory, under the file header in Photoshop, say automate batch, and you can choose what action, because you can save several different kinds of action. You can save the action. I just changed the whole sun to this orange color. So now it's all like this, but it's orange, even the prominences. And I brought it into Lightroom one more time just to make a mask of where the sun is, the surfacey parts say. And I said invert the mask, so it'd just be the sky, and set the saturation to 0. So it'd be no color. So it'd be black and white. And then I just synced all this. I did it for one image and just said, do it for all the images, which takes, 20, 30 seconds.
In Lightroom.
In Lightroom. And then now you've gotten that's kind of the whole steps. There's a couple different steps, but they're all easy steps. That's the thing. What I like about it.
Easy for you, Tom.
Well, it's just a series. I mean, I can make a checklist and anybody could do this. It's just like, it's kind of like whatever I do. If there's certain things I'm doing with Photoshop, I'm not very good with Photoshop at all. I just do the minimum. I just do colorations more than anything. I use the Lightroom program a lot more because I got familiar with that with doing some landscape photography, and I was using it, and so I'm more comfortable with that. But anyway, that's what I got.
That's great. I like the smoothness. So what was your length of time for your recording?
Okay, so each one. So basically, I shot 1,000 frames every 30 seconds, and I was shooting at a pretty high frame rate. I kept it at a 16. I used the ZWO ASI 174 mm, which I love that camera. It's a really good solar camera. It's probably the solar camera, at least in the ZWO family. With that, because it has a really fast native mode exposure, so even at 16-bit, I'm probably still shooting, I don't know, maybe 120 frames a second. So I'm only saving 1,000 frames, so it takes about 8 seconds, which is a benefit too, because these problems move a lot. And so I was always limiting myself to less than 30 seconds. I wouldn't make any video file longer than 30 seconds because I know I'm going to blur 30 seconds.
Yeah.
But the idea of shooting it at 8 seconds, only 8 seconds long, I'm thinking it's a good chance to get it, where it's sharper. And also, if you shoot a lot of frames like this, the couple that go in and out of focus, because when you're doing a lot of frames, some are better than other frames. Some are real sharp. Sometimes an airplane goes within 2 or 3 degrees of the sun and it gets real ripply and stuff. But if you shoot a lot of frames and you just wheel it through, it kind of smooths everything out. And I think it has a better look to it. So I kind of like this. This is the new way I'm going to do it now, I think.
Yeah,
Anyway.
that's great. Thank you so much. Keep in mind, Tom, somebody requested, I think it was me actually, for a future presentation, to actually see that workflow, to have you do a tutorial. So I know I'm putting you on the spot a little. There's no commitment time-wise. It can be just sometime in the future, but
Yeah, sometime
know
in the
when
future.
I had raised that,
Yeah, I owe Sandy a visit out there, but it's been so crappy, Sandy. I can't even look. I still have it. I have it on my phone counter, and I keep bumping it every 3 or 4 days, saying check the afternoon weather to see if I can if it's a good day to go to Sandy's,
Yeah.
But it just hasn't been good, but. Because Sandy has an
Yeah.
observatory out there, and so I was going to kind of steal a tour of his observatory at the same time, just go through a quick solar thing with him.
Yeah,
Well, it's all
I'd love to see the processing. That to me is what you're doing is just great. I would love to kind of like be looking over your shoulder one
Yeah, I
day.
mean, once you
You
see
need
it,
to do
you're gonna
that.
say, "Oh my goodness, I can do that," and then the mystique is gone.
No, I don't think so.
Ron,
I don't think you have to worry about that.
they're really great images, really great.
Really great.
Thanks.
Who else has some stuff?
Yeah,
Wayne,
I have some new pictures. Yeah.
did you get to try out your Bahtinov, your collimation Bahtinov, your triple one?
Well, I finally did at the Star Party for a little bit, and it worked. And unfortunately, I didn't realize how easily it is for those 3D printed things to warp if they get warm in the car. So they were a bit curved, but
Oh.
I did try it at the end of the Star Party last Sunday, and it worked, and it showed uh, which screws to adjust, and um, I tweaked mine a little bit, adjusted 2 screws, and it came out fine. So with the software, it works out pretty well. Free downloadable software. It's a Bakhtunov collimator, I think it's called, something like that. And
Yeah, I think John had put it up he
yeah,
put a link up last month. Yeah.
yeah, a guy goes by the name of place name here or something like that. No name. I forget what exactly. Some odd handle.
Insert name here.
Insert name here. Yeah, But his name is Chris, I think. But he wrote this thing, made it available.
There you go.
Yeah. So I didn't get any shots of it, but yeah, insert name here. Yeah. But anyway, that's what I used. And the only problem is on my laptop, it comes up real small and the printing is real tiny. So I ended up using the magnifier built into Windows so I could see it better. It's a weird effect. But anyway, let's see if I could I can start get my screen shared here. Okay. Yeah, I've been working on some processing, and so let's see where the enter. So the it's automatically paging through them. Leo triplet. Are you getting that?
Oh yeah.
Okay. Well, this I'd shot in the spring, and finally this afternoon finished my first go through on processing. Not 100% happy with it, but at least on the raw images, the tail on the hamburger galaxy was visible up above there, but it didn't come through too well on the finished result.
Definition's great.
And I also ran it through a utility in Cyril and a Python script that finds galaxies, and it goes through like 15 databases and finds galaxies that you wouldn't know are there otherwise. So, and then it does a table of individual shots from the print. So there's 31 galaxies that it found in there.
Huh.
Let's see where. I was up at Potter County at the Frosty Hollow Lodge and shot there. We got there Sunday after the Cherry Springs star party ended, and we got incredibly lucky. We had 3 nights back to back of clear skies.
Wow.
So that never happens, but that's what we hit. So I got the Markarian chain. That was only a half hour of capture there. And of course, there's lots of galaxies in there. The weird thing was there's one galaxy that I identified visually, and it didn't identify it. I'm not picking it out right off the bat now, but it turns out this thing uses up to 19 or 20 databases, but one of the ones that it doesn't use is a PCG database, and the galaxy that I spotted in here that didn't get identified is in that other database. And I don't know where it is offhand, but anyway, I thought that was kind of interesting to do.
That is cool.
And it would put it all in one picture if you want. We've got the picture with all the galaxies labeled, and then all of the individual galaxies shown.
That's really cool.
So with that table, it's pulling that matrix, it's pulling them out of your image and then blowing them up and arranging them in that array.
Right.
That's pretty cool.
That is cool.
Yeah.
What does that? What website is doing that, or software is doing it?
It's a Python script. They're free download a Python script for Cyril.
For Cyril.
The Cyril program. And I saw a YouTube video about it, and I thought that sounded kind of cool. So I ran it, and you have a list of all these databases like Messier, NGC, IC, and on down through LIDA, and I don't know. There's a whole bunch of these different things I never heard of, but by default it selects about 15, and that gives you lots of galaxies. And then here's my main target for the time up at Frosty Hollow. I got a little under 5.5 hours on that. So that was the main thing I was shooting. And I was pleased that I was able to get some of the jets coming off there.
Yeah.
And could sort of see like this little spiral galaxy underneath there. And I think this galaxy is kind of intriguing. Well, no, not that one. It's another one over here. This one here.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I'd like to know what the heck's going on there. There's two clearly defined spiral arms, and then some blobs that could be in the foreground, could be in the background, or they may be part of that galaxy. I don't know, but it's interesting.
A lot of detail.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
like the composition too.
Yeah, well, I framed it specifically to catch all those other galaxies
Yeah, that's
over
nice.
there. And let's see, here's a example of what that Python script did. And you can see there's a lot of galaxies in the upper right. That's why I composed it the way I did. I didn't want to center the whirlpool because I wanted to get all these other things in there. You know, there's a whole bunch of galaxies up there. Yeah, here's a galaxy it didn't identify.
Huh.
And that's the one I meant. It's a PGC, I think it is, PCG, something like that.
Yeah,
It's Sky Safari identified it, but this thing didn't. But it did identify an awful lot of them. About 300, I think, something like that. Anyway,
that's impressive. Yeah, it's amazing.
That's really good. I like that.
Yeah, it's a fun little thing to play around with, and I like galaxies, and so it's kind of fun to see what's out there.
Yeah, it's mind-boggling how many there are when you take a wider field image like that, and like during galaxy season. Like half I mentioned this last month, like half the quote stars that you're looking at in an image are actually galaxies.
Right, here you can see what it did in a table form, the Whirlpool galaxy in the upper left, and a bunch of these other galaxies, and it claims I captured 307.
300.
According to these databases.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's the combination of the two, and that's an earlier version of the Leo triplet. But so that's what I've been up to.
That's great.
That's cool.
You
Yeah.
really lucked out having 3 good nights.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was amazing.
Which scope were you using on that? You have a refractor and a Schmidt cast, right?
Yeah, I was using my little refractor Stellar
Okay.
View
A new one.
80 ED, I think it is. It's not an apochromatic, so I get a little purple fringing around stars, and I was using a utility called Unpurple in Cyril to try to mitigate that somewhat, with some success.
That's great.
So let's see how do I I don't know how to get out of this now.
Unshare.
Oh, I'll get back. Yeah. Okay.
Oh, there's stop share.
There it is. I got it.
Cool. Anyone else have any stuff to share?
I want to show one picture from Sea Star. Can I do that?
Yeah, absolutely.
I was at a dark site. I posted it on a group, but maybe not everyone has seen it. I was very pleased. What can be done? Not that, obviously. How do I get out of here? Here's a picture.
The dumbbell.
Oh, nice.
Just amazing. That's 120. These are 30-second subs, and on equatorial mount, the one that Joe lent me. And if you look at the stars, man, they're just like pretty small. I reduced the intensity a little bit overexposed. There's just so many stars, and behind is like, keep taking pictures. You eventually fill the whole frame with just stars or galaxies. But You know, it's all nice dots, 30 seconds. I didn't try 60 seconds, but anyway, it's very nice and colorful. I don't know if these are the true colors or not, but I thought it was pretty cool.
It is cool.
That's
Very
just straight out of
nice.
the box too, right?
It's about
That's
2
not even
hours, it looks like?
post-process, that looks like. It's straight from
I
CISO.
I put it through Apple Photos and I reduced the intensity a little bit because it was a little bit overexposed.
Yeah.
But otherwise, maybe contrast or something, but nothing
Yeah.
unusual. I didn't play, but I have all the subs, but I don't know how much better it can be, and I'm not such an expert at that. But maybe one day I'll play around with it. But anyway, that's just one picture I want to share. That's all I got.
Sweet.
That's nice. And that's about 2 hours worth, Tom? It looks like
Yeah, 2 hours,
22
yeah.
minutes.
I took another one, which was not that one, but this one on another night. So it was very dark. You know, this was a mosaic, 30 seconds,
Mosaic.
175 hours. So it's like twice the size of the field.
That's nice.
It's just amazing what
Yeah.
you can do with that sea star thing.
That's
It is.
great.
And
Tim.
it's just the one you posted this too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
remember
it's
seeing
really
that.
nice.
That's neat. That mosaic really worked out well. The framing's great on
Yeah,
that.
it really did.
Yeah, you could just, you know, if you find a dark place, then that thing is just amazing. You know, it just takes time. And I was sleeping while this is all. I just laid it out on the lawn, and programmed it, and I picked it up the next day. And the dew heater was on, so I had a little battery hooked up to it, and we kept it nice and dry. So
You said these were 30 seconds too, Tom?
yeah, 30 seconds, equatorial.
Yeah.
One thing I had trouble. I don't know if I mentioned it before. I wanted to take the Whirlpool Galaxy, but the thing was on the west side of the sky, and I was on one side of the building, and I tried to align it, do the state, plate solving to align it. It would refuse to do that. It kept wanting to go east. I don't know what I was doing wrong. It had a perfectly clear sky, south all the way to west, nice, and it just wanted to go east towards off the zenith. I was like, I couldn't align it. So finally, I just gave up, and I went on the east side on the lawn, and I just set it up there, and I did this over 2 nights. But I don't know if anybody knows anything about that, or how would I find out, or if I'm doing something wrong. But I didn't see any options to force it to look at the west side of the sky to align. That was a mystery to me.
Yeah, I don't know.
You have some option where you can change the angle, up and down, but scope was turning towards east. And in the building, I was right next to the building on a balcony or back patio. And I couldn't go any further. There was like a 200-foot drop into a river down there. So, it was dark. So I don't think that would help.
Save the scope though, Tom.
No, it was really dark there. It was not as dark as Cherry Spring, but it's like in the middle of Virginia, off of Culpeper into the mountains. That was my yearly retreat, and I thought, man, this would be. And I had 3 days, 3 nights, perfect weather. It was amazing. No rain. So anyway, that's all I want to share.
That's great.
Yeah, we had clear nights for 3 nights, but the only problem was on the 3rd night, a small black bear decided we were in his property and came by 3 times to chase us off. We finally packed up and called it a night.
Oh, wow. That's exciting.
Yeah. I was going to ignore it, but my wife decided, now this is time to pack up. The next day was going to be rain, so we had to pack the astronomy gear up anyway. So the black bear just expedited it.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And anything else from anyone before I go over to the Milky Way thing?
I don't have any images, Gary, but I have a couple of things, but they can wait for another meeting because
No, go ahead.
One of the YouTubers, Satchel Weiss from View into Space, put out a Chat GPT AI template that critiques your images. And I ran through one of my images that I was not very happy with and let it tell me what all was wrong with it. And if you want, I can show you the input and the output.
Yeah, I'd be curious.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. This is it. All of our handiwork is getting replaced.
Yeah, right.
You can see my screen.
Loading.
There you
There we
go.
go.
Oops. So this is the input that was put in, and actually here's actually the chat, and this was done with the O3, which is the deep thinking version, I believe, or the advanced reasoning.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and this is what I put in, and these are the files, and a stacked unprocessed master that had aberration inspector done on it, a stacked mosaic of that was the aberration inspector, one sub, and the same for the subs. Then ran a PSF report on the stacked and one sub, and then the fits headers for those two, and then what I was using, and what the acquisition was and the amount of time. And then just briefly, this was done a while ago. I don't even remember exactly what all my steps were here, but I put what I thought might have been just a general, and then asked it to critique it. Now um, this is the final that I had of IC 4.3. It's okay. I was not real happy with it when I ran through it the first time because I had a lot of time in it. And this is what one sub looks like. And I went, ooh, that looks really weird. That's just with just a quick like ESTF auto stretch. And you can see some other odd stuff here. But anyway, I just ran through it, and that's what I got for the processed image, and that's what I fed it just to see what it would come up with. And defects found. It went through and told me that that maybe there was some sensor tilt or a loose focuser. Well, I won't spend up a lot of time, take a lot of time. But I guess when I when it went through and looked at the PSF report, this was interesting to me that the full width half max of the master is 25% worse than your best sub. I don't know why that would be. One of you guys that knows a lot more about this than me maybe can comment on it. It could also be that ChatGPT doesn't know what it's talking about.
It could hallucinate. I'd have to look.
Hallucinate, right. And then the degradations, similar with kind of what it's talking about above here. Integration of poorer frames, which I do think I had, and resampling during registration. I want to go back sometime and go through those and pick out. It was done over 3 nights. And I think there was some stuff that I threw in there that probably shouldn't have been part of the stack. And then you can see this one's also interesting. Dither bigger. If I'm reading that right, greater than 20 pixels every 3 frames.
Wow,
That's really big. That's
that's a lot.
Funny.
Yeah. I think I do 3, 5 maybe. It's not a lot compared to that.
Is it pixels on your guide scope or on your imaging?
I
Unless
don't
you
know.
have a
Well, this was a 2600. Well, no, it's a I think it uses the 174 mini and on the as a little sensor on the 2600 Duo. Isn't
right. Right, I'd have to look. 20 pixels isn't bad if that's on your imaging frame.
Yeah, but it typically refers to the guide scope.
Yeah, that's what I would think.
You have to take kind of that ratio.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Let me go back here real quick. I think I have to look real quick.
I wonder if it's factoring in the settling down after the dither somehow.
I don't know. I mean, if it's looking at the final image, it shouldn't because you're your dithering, you won't start imaging until you're settled for, X number of seconds at whatever your tolerance you have set. That's interesting.
And then processing priorities, it gives you some ideas of what to do for the processing, and then just an overall review of the composition. I thought it was fun just to plug it all in.
Interesting.
I could put the link into his video, YouTube video, and you can copy and paste the template, and you just follow his video to collect the files and the information that he wants, and you punch it in and let it rip. That's what it came back with.
That's really wild.
That's a cool
It is.
experiment.
Yeah. I guess that's the only thing I have to share my screen for. And then let me stop sharing and I can just show you. I got this, the Skywatcher. It's a solar tracker. Are you guys familiar with this? It's fairly new. You pretty much power it on here, and it finds the sun and centers on the sun. I've had it out twice. It's almost dead center on the sun in both cases. And then if it's just a little off, there's a little joystick here that you can adjust it. And I had it tracking the sun it's an alt-as. I had it tracking the sun for a half an hour or so both times and kept it right in the middle of the frame. And that's a Lunt 40 with a ASI 174, which fills about half of the frame, the sun with half of the frame, and it stayed pretty much set. It was a little off center when it first found the sun both times, but just by just using that joystick and getting it centered, it tracked it fine. It was when I saw some demos on it, I thought, this just can't possibly work that good. But yeah, you just push the button and off it went. It's powered by I think it's 8 AA batteries, and it has a little adapter that you can plug in that you can power it from like a 12 volt, the DC 12 volt source. I haven't done that yet. But I'm real happy with it. Now, getting good images of the sun, that's a whole other area that's outside of the ability of the of the mount. But that'll hopefully come in time. And then the last thing I'll show here, not take up too much time, is I'm not gifted like Prasad, of course, and I can't build what Pete did, but I did get the ML Astro makes their own SHG that's got they're selling them like crazy. I waited about 4 months for this. I don't know how to use it, so we need Prasad to give us the tutorial on it.
Okay.
But I have it sitting here. If anybody's interested in playing around with this before I get to it, because I have lots of other things on my list, let me know. I can bring it to the meeting on Friday. I'd be happy to give it to somebody who's who is ready to give this a try. I don't anticipate to get to this anytime soon, so just let me know and I'll bring it on Friday. You can just email me or send something in the chat.
That's pretty wild. Yeah, I think Prasad is, we'll line up something with him in the fall probably. He wanted a little more time to get used to his second generation SGH, and then but it looks like he's getting really good results. So I'm hoping that in the that maybe that September-ish, September-October timeframe, he'll be ready to give a presentation on what he did to put that together, and also the software involved with doing the turning the strips into a full solar image and everything.
Yeah.
That would be cool.
And then I had an issue with the ASI Air app that led me down a comedy of errors trying to troubleshoot what I thought may have been a problem with a cable or a camera. And then I, in the dark, was out swapping cameras and such and dropped the camera on the ground, and it could have landed in the grass or it could have landed on the concrete base of my pier, and it chose to land on the concrete base, of course. And I don't think that camera is going to be of much use anymore other than a paperweight. But there's been a fair amount of posts. The ASI Air, the release that they put out that was version 2.4 had a bunch of issues with it, to include problems with the meridian flip where it wouldn't do it, or it would be delayed, or it would just hang, and some other issues. That's not what I experienced. What I experienced was that it wouldn't load an image. It would take the image and it would just sit there saying it was loading, and then nothing would ever appear on the screen. They issued an apology and they re-released an older version, which was 2.3.3. Now, right now, if you go to update there, you'll get a 2. This is on an Apple iOS. If you'll get the 2.4.1. They said that they fixed it in 2.4.1. So that is available now. So even though they said, I guess in the interim, if you went to do an update, they posted an older version that it would update to. I have the tablet that had 2.3.2 on it, and when I go to update that now, it will prompt me for 2.4.1. So if anybody has an older version of the ASI Air, the app, at least for the Apple, if you go to update it now, it will go to the 2.4.1, which does not appear to have any issues. But the lesson learned there is they do, I think earlier on, Gary, with the Air, the app, you didn't get an option when it said it was time to update it, but you do now. You can say no and choose not to have it update.
Yeah. That is that I think they kind of learned a lesson with that situation that happened, because in the past they forced you to update. And it caught me one time. I was out in the field, and I had Wi-Fi, and it started to do an update when I just turned on the equipment. Now, before I use the equipment, I make sure I kind of like turn on the app and check for updates and stuff. But I actually intentionally avoided updating because of that problem. The problem, that bad sort of version that they put out. And I just saw it, I guess it was 2 days ago, they came out with the corrected one. When I did my app, it's kind of refresh on the iPad, it had a new ASI Air version.
Yeah, so the lesson learned is now, since you do have the option to say no to an update, choose no until it's got time to mature on the vine.
Yeah.
Because that was I wasted a night and then eventually lost the camera because of it.
Oh, that's a shame.
That's a shame. Well,
Yeah.
what a shame. Yeah, it was heartbreaking reading your post. It was sort of like, oh, man.
I tried to put some humor into it, but
yeah, but still, you could tell what was, I mean, dropping a camera on concrete is like never fun. No matter what kind of spin, it's not fun.
Yeah, I really felt for you, Brett. I mean, I did. It was funny, and I appreciate your humor, but all it did was bring back me. If it makes you feel any better at all, I dropped my iPad Pro in the driveway and it landed face down and cracked.
Perfect, right?
It still works, but it ruined the night.
Yeah, and it was a hot, one of the hot humid night. I'm sweating like crazy, and as I'm swapping the camera, I'm saying, you shouldn't do this out in the dark. You do this when you're in the house. Just let it go for the night. I'll be real careful. And down it went.
Oh man, what a shame.
I have a question too for the group. So I have a C-Star S50, and I just got the Dwarf 3. And I'd like to do some comparisons of them. What would you guys suggest, or say like two good representative targets? Like a cluster, maybe to see the sharpness of the stars for both. Make sure I do the same length exposures and the same amount of time, and try to keep it as consistent. But then not just one target, maybe like two different types of targets.
If you're shooting nebulae, I think the dumbbell is the brightest planetary, and I would maybe recommend M8 and M20 for nebulae. Just my 2 cents.
Okay.
It's probably done. There are probably many YouTube videos that have done that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, something, a fun exercise for me.
Yeah.
I would suggest M13 is if you want to look and see how good it resolves lots of stars.
Okay, thanks.
It's a good thought.
Thank you, guys.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Can I show a picture?
Okay. Um, maybe hold it.
Okay.
Are you going to be next? You're going to be on the meeting next? I'm getting concerned timing wise that
This
we
is
might run long.
it's a
Unless
comedy
it's
picture.
something quick.
It's quick.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. I sent this to Al Lamperti because I didn't know what these strange squiggles were. There's the same artifact at various places in different colors across this frame. Here's one here, it's dimmer. That little squiggle. There's, if you, in a good resolution, you could see quite a number of them. I was wondering if he could explain this. And the camera was a film camera taken in Maine about 12 years ago, and they're all over the place. They're different colors. So that's very strange.
Hey, static electricity.
What's the galaxy in the center that what was your
M31.
target? Pardon me?
M31. Andromeda. It was just a very strange thing. The camera, you would have to jump through hoops to make a double exposure on the same piece of film. And it was one of many I took that night. And as I said years ago, I sent the picture to Al Lamperti to see if he had any idea what it was. But it's a comedy. I just thought I'd leave you that.
Interesting. I mean,
Yeah.
what Sandy said could be, I mean, static or something. It's possible.
Huh.
I mean, it's film. You said it was film. If it was a dry night, a long exposure, it's possible.
Sure you didn't kick the mount?
Yeah, it looks like you bumped the mount.
I think the mount was
Okay.
kicked.
Yeah, with the bright stars will do that too.
Yeah, it's the same pattern and the colors matches every star. So it looks like you bumped the mount.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks for looking.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen here. And so you guys should see a full slide.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, perfect. So this is what I did to put together that image that I posted recently with that Star Trails Spring Milky Way.
Yes.
So this is the image that I posted. This is the final image. And I'm going to go through the steps of putting this together. So one of the effects that I'm kind of liking in terms of this approach is this, even with the little bit of blurring in the trees because of the stacking of the sort of the Milky Way image, and the way the stars are sort of almost like tailing, like tapering as they move. It's kind of just I'm picturing sort of the Earth flying through space, in addition to spinning. There's just motion. There's a lot of motion feeling in this kind of image. So that's why I actually wound up spending a fair amount of time on this, getting rid of every airplane and every satellite trail and stuff like that. Not that has to be done, because on some of them I haven't done that and they look good too. But I thought I would go through the overall processing of an image like that. So the first thing is plan the shot. The Milky Way is different times of the year, and you kind of need to know, you need to figure out where you're going to end up. So you want to know where the shot's going to end, because that end position of the Milky Way is really your basis for the whole composition. Set up your equipment, take individual frames. I shoot in JPEG and RAW. I use the JPEG for the star trails, and then I use the RAW, 16 frames of the RAW for stacking the Milky Way image. Then you have to comb through all those frames, all those shots. Then I create the star trails image using the freeware software called Sequador. And then I stack a subset of RAW frames for the Milky Way image, process the Milky Way image, and then combine them in Photoshop. And these are like I'm using PixInsight for the processing of the Milky Way. Obviously, there's a lot of other applications that you can use. If you're using Lightroom instead of Photoshop, or one of the freeware versions of like Photoshop's lookalike kind of thing, or Serral or Deep Sky Stacker. So this just happens to be what I have used. So in terms of the particulars of this shot, I used a full frame mirrorless camera. It's one of the low end Canon full frames, mirrorless. It works quite well, unmodified. I used a Sigma 14 to 28 millimeter lens at 14 millimeter, f2.8. I used an intervalometer, a Bogan camera tripod, a dew heater. I used Sequador, PixInsight, and Photoshop. This is an old version of Photoshop that I have, and I refuse to go into the subscription plan. It does what I need, and I'm not going to upgrade. I bought it 15 years ago or 12 years ago. It works fine. I'm going to keep using it. This is shot from Cherry Springs. As people who have been up there realize, that's looking east, southeast. This is kind of that tree line looking to the east, the trees that we had planted many years ago there to block street lights from the cars. This was shot on April 28th from around 1:50 in the morning to around a little bit before 4 o'clock. It was starting to get, it's right before, I think astronomical twilight ended in about 20 minutes or 25 minutes. So you can see some of the brightening of the eastern sky. It's about 2 hours elapsed time. The star trails images are put together with 374 pictures, 17-second exposure each, with about a 2-second gap at ISO 6400. So those are the particulars of that particular of those images and that particular composition. Planning the shot, some things to consider: site location. A dark site is a really good thing, obviously for a lot of reasons, not just for deep sky stuff, but even for something like this. You want to shoot the Milky Way. You'd like to get it to go as close to the horizon as possible. Something like Cherry Springs, where there's not much to the south of that field, other than the Susquehannock State Forest, is a good location, even looking east. So you can get a decent exposure. You can shoot at a high ISO without getting a lot of sky fog, things like that. And then also, how good are your horizons? Are you going to include some foreground object, like with a light painting or something like that, or just have it be silhouetted like I chose to do? The position of the Milky Way, obviously it changes season to season. And then how long should you shoot for? So what I typically do is I'll use Sky Safari on my iPad or phone, or this is a Stellarium screenshot of just kind of like, if you open it up, you can sort of pan around. You're looking either east or west if it's later in the year, or south if it's in the summer, in terms of where the core of the Milky Way is going to wind up. So this is a screenshot at the end of that exposure, at the end of that sequence of pictures. So you can see the Milky Way. I was trying to get more of an arc, kind of that Milky Way arc thing. You would need a really wide angle, like maybe an 8 millimeter lens or something, to capture more of that arc. but this was kind of what I was going for, kind of part of the core. So I'm aimed east southeast, part of the core, and then part of that arcing Milky Way. If you look at the beginning of the sequence, I started around 10 of 1, and you can see that's where the Milky Way is there. So if you go back to that other, so it goes from there, and then it ends up at this point. You kind of want to focus on where is it going to end up. I had a particularly challenging evening because this trip to Cherry Springs was not very well planned. We couldn't get up to the Big Dipper Lodge for the DVAA event due to some health problems with Tracy's mom. We were in Berwick, where her mom lives, visiting, and Cherry Springs is that's about halfway between where I live and Cherry Springs. So when we were going there, we thought, if the weather's going to be good Sunday or Monday, let's just throw some stuff in the van, and then just, if it looks like it's going to be good, let's just drive up there. Well, I didn't bring my batteries, my little AC adapter for the camera. I didn't have any of that stuff. So I go up there, and it's kind of like, I have the length of the camera battery, which is probably about an hour and a half, 2 hours. So, and I have one night to do this. So let me just take my best shot. So I actually waited until around, when I, looked at the timing of this, I actually waited until around 1:30 in the morning. I was set up before I kind of did the final composition, turned things on, because I knew I had one shot at it, and that would be it. And fortunately, it all worked out. I had like a dew heater. I had to put tables underneath because the cords weren't long enough. It was like one of those kind of evenings, but fortunately, it all worked out. In like July, like now, if you're looking south, you get that vertical Milky Way. So you have a whole different type of composition. And then this was a shot that I did in September of last year at the Big Dipper Lodge. And you can see this is in the western, this is looking west. And you can see the direction of the stars is actually setting. Whereas when you look at the other shot, they're rising. So you can play around with a lot of different effects depending on, on what time of year it is, what you want to get out of it. This was 213 30-second shots. So how many shots should you take? So roughly speaking, the Earth rotates 360 degrees in about 24 hours, or about 15 degrees per hour. So if you get about 2 hours worth of exposures, you get about 30 degrees of rotation. And that seems to be a pretty good amount. You can certainly do less, you can certainly do more. But for this type of composition, that's kind of what I've honed in on. I do approximately 15, 30-second exposure, depending on what lens you have. The first one I did was 17 millimeter lens. I actually had it set at 19 for some reason. I have no idea why. And then I did a 14 millimeter for this. You want to go as kind of a fast ISO. You're going to be adding a lot of frames together, and it's going to blur together with the star trail, stuff like that. So you can get away with a little bit of noise. I'm stacking the Milky Way, so that allows me to get a little bit of improvement in signal noise ratio. So I've been going for about 2 hours of total elapsed time and about 3 shots per minute. So yeah, I get about 360 frames in about 2 hours. So as far as equipment, just camera, wide angle lens, reasonably sturdy tripod. If you have some way to dampen it, sure, why not? And then, like a handheld intervalometer, or a lot of cameras have a time-lapse mode. You can probably use that as well. A dew heater, one of the things with a wide angle lens is they have a big hunk of glass at the front. And if it's Cherry Springs, you're going to have dew. We had no dew that night, even though I had the dew heater on. There was a slight breeze, and it was actually dew free. So that worked out well. But if you're using a dew heater, I tend to use these now because they're a lot cheaper than the Astro ones. You can get them for about $15 on Amazon. They plug into a USB port. They have a nice wide strap for a camera lens, but just be careful that you don't, by putting that on or playing with that, you don't move the focus ring. It's a real common problem. I have blue painter's tape like wrapped around my tripod legs. I'll peel a piece of that off. Once I get it in focus, I tape down the focus ring just to avoid any kind of, surprise later on. And I've had that happen where you shoot for, an hour or two and then you look and then everything's a little out of focus because something moved. Actually, this was a thing that I borrowed from a presentation Joe had done a long time ago. But in terms of focusing, I'm not going to spend much time with this because you guys know how to focus if you're doing astrophotography and you're playing around with it. But you can, typically use live view mode, or even if you're not using live view mode, turn off your autofocus, turn off your lens stabilization, and then use the zoom feature on the camera to zoom in on a star or a planet, something bright. And then get your focus, tape it down, secure it, and then go from there. Mirror slap is another thing that, for long exposure stuff, you have to be careful about. I have not had an issue. I mean, with this particular shot, it was done with a mirrorless camera, so obviously mirror slap's not an issue. But at a really wide angle like this, it just has not been a problem even when I've used my older DSLRs. Sometimes the mirror lockup stuff will make you mental when you're trying to use it with an intervalometer, because depending on the camera, depending on the mode, sometimes you press it once to get the mirror to lock up, then you have to press it again to get the exposure on some cameras. With an intervalometer, that doesn't work very well. So if you can lock up the mirror permanently, like live view, you could just do it that way. And I've done that in the past where I've gone into live view and then used the intervalometer. So image selection can be tedious. So you're looking for a long sequence of images. You don't want any gaps in it. You don't want to drop a frame, because if you drop a frame, you're going to have a little teeny, like a Morse code dot in your star trails image. Ideally, you can probably get away with a couple if you're dropping frames, or if you're, hey, I want to check my composition, and you're going to just look at a frame, you will notice that. So my experience and my recommendation is take your best guess at where you're going to expose this, frame your shot, focus it, turn it on, and walk away for a couple hours. Just assume it's good. If it's not good, try it again another time, because you will see those gaps. You want to make sure that your image sequence ends on the frame that is used for the background Milky Way image. That's kind of your anchor. That last frame, that highest position or lowest position, if it's a setting Milky Way, is going to be your kind of anchor. And then you're going to put as many frames in front of that as you can to make the star trails look good. A pencil and a paper, and I'm going to just jump to this really fast. This is what I wind up doing. My first attempt at this last September, I guess I was facing west and it was September. Maybe people weren't flying their planes because it was even earlier at night. There were very few airplane trails, satellite trails. I kind of lucked out. This one, I mean, every couple dozen frames, there's some faint ones, there's really bright ones. And I thought, at this point, I can't afford to be that selective. I'm going to put them all through Sequator, and then I'm going to clean it up later on if it's objectionable. So that's why a pencil and a paper to keep track can help, because if it's a few things, you can keep it in your head. If it's like that, my brain doesn't work that way anymore. So you can use the Sequator software to create the star trails image. It's freeware. This is a little introduction to it, and then this is the download. So if you just Google Sequator or copy those links, you'll get to it. And then I clean up the star trails image. In this case, the first time I did it last September, I didn't have to. I wound up using the clone stamp tool to remove all the satellites and and it can be very tedious. It probably took an hour and a half just to do that. And I did it over like a couple days because it can kind of burn you out after 15, 20 minutes. You're not even sure what you're looking at anymore. But I'll show you that. So this is how this is the Sequitur software. The very, very easy application, very straightforward. The things that are important have these red stars on them. So I've tried probably every setting in here in the past, and what I've settled on is this, and it seems to have a nice, pleasing, at least to my eye, result. So you want to get your sequence of images without any gaps, and don't worry about planes and stuff unless it's something really, really bad. Then you might want to skip that and start after that or something. But you basically open, and we can go into that. We're a little short on time, so I might just leave it at this. But you basically, when you click on one of these labels, it opens up a dialog. So it basically opens up a file open dialog when you click on star images. And you can even go to file and then star images, and it'll open up a file open dialog. And then you load up, you point to the first one, point to the last one, and then load it up. You tell it what your base image is. And for me, the base image is the last image in the sequence. And it's the same thing is true when I do the Milky Way stacking. I end on that. I take 16 frames, and then making sure I end on that same base image. And the whole point of that is to make sure that the dots that are part of the Milky Way, the star field in the Milky Way, line up with the end of those star trails. And you might need to do a tiny bit of tweaking because when you stack, things are moving a little and you have to crop it. But if you do that, everything lines up very, very nicely, and it can save you some headaches. If you click on this, the composition trails, it'll open up this little dialog down there. It actually, I think the default is something like type of thing you want to do. And you click on it, and then I tell it I want to do star trails. And then I've also found this motion effect to be a nice touch. I think it kind of creates that slight taper in those star trails. And then the other thing that I've experimented with, which I'm not exactly sure what it does, because it doesn't take out things like airplanes and stuff, but I found it seems to look a tiny bit better if I do this remove dynamic noises. And that might be more applicable if you're doing stacking, where it'll remove any kind of like stray artifacts, something like that. But I leave it on here, and it seems to work fine. And then you hit start. Once you load your files, put the base image, tell it the output file. I think it'll nag you if you forget to do that. And you go from there. So this is the output of the stacked image the first time I ran it. And I thought, oh, why are the trees lit up? And then I also knew that there would be things like these airplane trails in here. And when you zoom in, like there's big ones here, there's a bunch of stuff up in here when you zoom in. But generally speaking, they don't look that bad. You can get away with a fair amount. But something like that, I actually stacked it, put the Milky Way, and I just didn't like having the trees lit up. It turned out there was one frame at around 3 in the morning where I think someone turned their lights on for a second or drove up the little access road, lit up the trees. So what I did was, to avoid like dumping that and having a little gap, I actually wound up, since the foreground's the same, I went into Photoshop and I just did a really crude mask just around the trees, and I just grabbed the trees from another image and just dropped it in, because the trees aren't changing. It's a fixed tripod. And the stars the stars aren't changing that much from frame to frame. So I fixed that, and then I put it back and I ran Sequator again, and I got rid of that. So now I have a nice silhouetted foreground. This is fully, oh, I'm sorry. This is fully cleaned up. This one, I'm going the wrong way. This is fully cleaned up. I tried to zoom in thinking I'm on my live screen. So like I said, there's probably about an hour and a half of cleaning that up. And I used a clone stamp, and I can go into that if we have time. I have the Photoshop pulled up here. We can look at that. So that's the base star trails image. Now the Milky Way image. So as I mentioned, the last image from the sequence can be used for the Milky Way. You don't have to stack them, but I found that stacking them is really adding a lot in terms of better signal noise. So this is what I did. I took a small group of images, ending with that last image in the sequence, and stacked it. I used 16 images. And then I used PixInsight to actually process that. I used raw images. That's the other thing. So 16 raw images were used. You can use whatever application you are comfortable with. So this gives you an idea of a single. This is a close-up of kind of like more towards the core of the Milky Way. Single image. This is the last frame. That's 6325. And this is 16 stacked. So to my eye, noticeably better. This is stacked and processed. This is just processed.
Yeah, big difference.
Yeah, huge use, and that's just 16 subs. So, if you square root of that is 4, so your signal noise ratio is noticeably improved. And the reason why I'm limiting it to 16 is because I don't want those trees to blur too much. Because the deeper that stack, the more those trees are going to blur, because the camera's not tracking. It's just fixed. But the software has to align the stars first before you can stack them. So the stars are in the same position, but the trees aren't at that point. So from a workflow standpoint, in terms of processing, this is my PixInsight workflow, and I'll show you that more diagrammatically. But I always kind of save that set of icons. PixInsight allows you to save that, so I just kind of start from that. If I am doing this another time, I'll open this project file just to get the these icons, because they already have my settings embedded in them. And obviously I would have to change this. I'd have to change which images I'm aligning, which images I'm stacking. But as far as the other settings, at that point, you would just tweak depending on the histogram, the curves. That's going to depend upon the actual object. So as far as PixInsight workflow, so I first do a star alignment on the 16 images. I do image integration. I do blur exterminator. That sharpens those stars a little more, because remember, the stars, even at 17 millimeters, if I'm doing a 20-second exposure or something, you're going to have slight trails in those stars. For the star trails image, great. I'm making them trail anyway, so who cares if they're trailing? But for the Milky Way, I'd rather them be round. Blur exterminator will think that it's just kind of tracking error or something like that, and try to correct them. And you'll see that when I show the close-up. I actually plate solve it because I want to do a color calibration on it. That can be tricky because you really need to. PixInsight, or probably almost any image solver, any plate solver, doesn't really like something that's 105 degrees wide of like sky. But I found that it works pretty good if you put the image scale correctly, and tell it how many pixels or how many arc seconds per pixel, depending on how your software works, and you find a nice bright star like Altair was almost in the center of this image, I just put the coordinates for Altair in, and then I put in the parameters for the camera, and it solved it right away. Before I put Altair in, if I just kind of, said it's near this constellation, it just sat there and ran and said, nope, I don't know what you're shooting. I then do a color calibration, and then I do just a stretch, histogram stretch curves, a little bit of noise exterminator, a little bit of curves to either increase the contrast or saturation. And then there's usually a little bit of green, and then I usually run the SCNR green to just get rid of that. And I'll show you those in a second. So this is the image integrated. This is a blow up of just this portion. That's M8. That's actually M8 right there. Here's Sagittarius, the teapot. Here's the spout, M8s here. Then this is a little bit of blur exterminator. So you can see the difference is significant. Wide angle lenses are going to have artifact, right? They're going to have flare, and especially in the corners. This is in the corner. So you can see a little bit of the lens flare. The lens is pretty good. This isn't bad. This is shot wide open. This is an f2.8. 14 millimeter f2.8. But that's better. And that's not a super heavy duty blur exterminator. It's probably like 50% or something like that. We can look at that. This is with color calibration. I mean, look at the difference in terms of the bringing out, more of the blues, bringing out more of those tones. So this is the a spectrophotometric color calibration, looking at those stars, saying, I know what color those stars are supposed to be. I'm going to correct the white balance of this image. This is with histogram. Keep in mind, these have screen transfer function, because these would all be really dark if I showed these without the STF. This is without STF. This is my first histogram stretch. Three increments. This is with curves. So increasing contrast, bringing out the core of the Milky Way better. So if you look at the difference, this is a very flat looking image. Just applying curves. I'm not clipping on any of this. I'm still just in that linear, in that non-clipped range. I shouldn't say linear, but I'm non-linear now, but I'm just pushing it to eke more of the detail out that I find of interest for the image. That's with noise exterminator. If you look at this, there's almost no difference there. I'm going to go back to no noise exterminator with noise exterminator. It's subtle. I mentioned this before. I've been dialing back on a lot of this stuff, so it just doesn't look. It looks too fake if you use them at the defaults. And in this, I don't care as much about noise. I want it to be better than that first image I showed you, the single frame, but I'm going to be superimposing a really bright thing on top of this whole thing. And then curves. This what I did was I just boosted the saturation. You can use curves with the saturation setting, and I put a slight arc in the saturation. You can see the difference here. Look at the main image. It just pulls it up a little bit, gives it a little more pop. And then I remove the green. So if you look at the difference there's a little green hue there. Here it has a little redder tone without that greenish hue. That's the background image. That becomes the master background image. Trees are a tiny bit blurred. Milky Way looks pretty good. I then take that into Photoshop. And on this, I actually have these as like the different layers. I'm going to run through these quickly and then go to Photoshop Live to just show you some of the tweaking, because this is kind of where the, it's in the eye of the beholder. This is kind of the more artistic side of how do you want to blend this image, these images, to kind of get this this effect, whatever effect you're going for. And I encourage people to experiment with this because it's actually, I wound up having a lot of fun just like playing around with it. So this is all of the layers in Photoshop. The base layer, goosing it to get that kind of hot Milky Way look. A star trails layer, a duplicate of the star trails layer that I use is like a fine tuning, and I'll show you how that works. Then a little bit of brightness contrast enhancement, and then when I post on Astrobin, they want your name on it, so I have a layer that just has my name on it. So I'm going to go through those fast. So that's the base layer. That's goosed. That's a goosed base layer. That's with the first layer of star trails on it. This is with a slight adjustment layer of star trails. You can see it's a fairly subtle difference. But I found that it's much easier if you just want to fine tune something, make a duplicate of the layer and set it to like 10% opacity. And then it acts like a fine tuning control. Rather than working at like 70% to 71 is a bigger, it's kind of harder to fine tune it than it is for going from like, adding 10% of something or adding 11% of something in. And then final contrast enhancement, a little bit of brightness contrast, and then the name. So I'm gonna escape out of this. And you should see you would see the Veil Nebula now with all my icons. Okay, I'm going to open up Photoshop. You see Photoshop now?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. I'm going to open that so I see what you're seeing. Okay, so I'm going to turn those off because I want to show you the difference here. So that's that base Milky Way image that I just showed you out of PixInsight. One of the things that you'll notice right away is if you just put the star trails in, even if the star trails, this is 55%. I have the opacity of that star trails image at 55%. Totally wipes out, not totally, but it really kind of swamps the Milky Way. Even though that Milky Way on its own doesn't look bad. You put that on top of it, it gets lost in the mix. So what I found is that by adding a curves layer, these are called adjustment layers, but you don't have to do it as a layer. I just do it as a layer in Photoshop because then I can tweak it. So I have a typical sort of contrast and enhancement curve in curves. And the nice thing with this is I can adjust that on the fly. So if I put that on, it looks way overdone. It's like, oh my God, that doesn't look good. But if you put this on top of it, it starts to look better. So what I found is that a nice way to do this is bring that adjustment layer up, and you can tweak. You can see exactly what moving those little sliders does. You can see if I want to bring up the core a little bit, I can move those midtones up. If I want to really highlight this area here, this kind of like a center towards the center of the Milky Way, you can see that control point there is what's affecting that. So you can literally sit there and just sort of fine tune that to what works for you. There's no right or wrong answer here. It's just what looks good to you. And if you pop that off again, you can see that's fairly exaggerated, but in the context of that, it kind of works. And that's a nice thing with doing it more in a dynamic. If you use a thing called adjustment layers. So if you do layer in Photoshop, you do new adjustment layer, and you can do brightness, contrast, levels, curves, vibrance, saturation. You can do a lot of the different controls, like the image adjustment controls. I have to go to something that has an image in it. So if you do image adjustments, it's got those same kind of parameters. So rather than having it be applied to it and then you got to back it out if you don't like it, by having it as an adjustment layer, you can kind of tweak it more in a live mode. And then you can see what this does. So this is just a duplicate of that layer down to 11%. And it actually acts as like a fine tuning. If I move that slider a little bit, you can see it sort of fine tunes the intensity of the Milky Way. If I turn it off, it looks pretty good, but it seemed like it needed a tiny bit more pop. So that's why I added that in. And then lastly, I have an adjustment layer for brightness and contrast. And if I look at that, again, it's yeah, so it's neutral on brightness, and then I just boosted the contrast. Now you can do the same thing with curves. If I were to duplicate this layer and put it up there, it would have a very similar effect. In this particular instance, I just wanted to tweak the contrast. So that's what, just to give it a little more pop, so it didn't look as flat as it does like that. One of the things that's hard to control is those star trails can become overwhelming kind of fast. And I even played with numbers like this, like bringing this down to 20%. And that has a cool look too. And I would look at it, then the next day I'd look at it again. I'd say, I feel like I'm looking at too much Milky Way. I want to see more of the motion of those stars. And so, and I always kind of came back to 50%. I tried it over a couple days and I always came back to 50%. I said, okay, I think that's where this picture wants to be, 50%. And then I added a tiny bit of tweaking to that, and then the name drops in. So I think there's a lot of ways to skin a cat, as we've talked before, but this is the approach that I've taken. I think it's open for interpretation and experimentation. I did this different. This time I did it different than I did last September. Not drastically different, but somewhat different. But that's basically how that's put together. And then you're going to need to do a tiny little bit of star alignment. So if you zoom in anywhere here, they line up pretty darn good. You'll see a little bit of run out, and that's probably just due when you're stacking it. You're getting a little bit of I guess adjustment in the frames when it's trying to align the stars, because the software tries to make up for any distortion in the lenses, stuff like that, or any kind of errors you might have in the capture. But they generally come out pretty good. So you might have to take an image. So I'm going to turn this one off. I'll turn that one on. I'm going to zoom in, and then I'm going to just cursor that a little bit. So you can see how, like right now, the star trails images don't match. When you first put it on, you'll be kind of close, but you may need to tweak, go over to the other side. Hey, am I still okay here? Yeah, I'm still okay. I'm a little bit off here. Tweak that one way or the other. And let me go back to this. Oops. It's weird seeing the so I don't know why it doesn't want to do it. How come you're not coming back up? I'm going to maximize that. I don't know. I put it on the other screen. So there we go.
Yes, back.
So so that's that final image. And then the nice thing of having it plate solved is you can use like PixInsight in this case, or whatever, to actually overlay the constellations and stuff, which it's always harder. It's really hard for me to see the constellations, even though I kind of know what they are when I look at the star trails images. It's hard for my brain to isolate those patterns. But that's that, and then that's the representative. That's the last frame with the annotations on it, and that's it.
Very
Pretty
good,
cool,
Gary.
man.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Interesting process.
Very good.
Thank you. Sorry we ran a little late.
It was worth it.
You're
Thank
welcome.
Very
you for the
inspectable.
detailed walkthrough on that. That's I like the fact that you're showing, a lot of this does get down to artistic interpretation and experimentation and going back and thinking about it, because that's how I do mine.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. It's you're not trying to like, if you're taking a picture of an object, there's a certain amount of interpretation in that too, in terms of finessing the processing to bring out certain areas or something like that without overdoing it. But an image like this, it's kind of a free-for-all. You can do whatever you want.
Yeah.
And, Bill McGeaney had we were shooting, and at the September Big Dipper Lodge, I had my camera set up with the wide angle lens pointing west, and he said, what are you going for here? And I said, I don't really know. I said, the Milky Way is going to end up about here, at the end of the night. I'm just going to let the camera run and then see what happens. And then he had tried an experiment with when he was up in Canada, putting a base Milky Way image. He had like this morning Milky Way, which was really kind of cool. And he used that, and it planted a seed. Oh, let me spend more time on the actual Milky Way shot. Because I used to put it underneath, but I didn't spend a lot of time on it. It was just kind of a background image.
I see.
To kind of really get the play between the two, because the Milky Way, I mean, that's what's carrying all those stars around, right?
Yep.
So, and anyway, so yeah, and then it kind of grew from that. So, but any other questions or anything?
Yeah, I was wondering how you diminished the brightness of the stars as they trailed. So Sequitur does that.
Yeah, and it seems like that motion setting in Sequitur does that. It's this so if you do star trails, this motion. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm not sharing. Sorry. So it seems like this button here. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Seems like this here. When you click on this, it opens up this dialog to align stars or trails. If you click trails, you have this effect options, this motion effect. Without that, it's more of it's like a fatter line. And it doesn't have that kind of tapering effect, which I think gives it a much more sense like of motion.
Yeah, I saw that your photograph a month ago. From on tape. But I was wondering how you did that with an intervalometer that gradually increases the exposure time. But
no, it's a fixed exposure time.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so yeah. So I see. You were wondering how
you did it.
I got you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Thank you. The most tedious part of this whole thing was getting rid of those airplane trails. That would be a whole that could be a whole separate little 10-minute thing showing you that. So we're not going to do that now. But if anyone's interested in that clone like how to do clone stamping on something like that complicated an image, because the problem is that the star trails, because they're arced lines, sometimes the planes are going along like they're almost parallel to the star trails. It's a pain in the butt. If they're perpendicular, it's really easy to get rid of them. But the ones that are at a slight angle relative to the star trails, you have to really be careful because you can't grab a star, you can't grab a pattern. You're working in a tiny little space. You can't grab a pattern and just duplicate it because you might make that star trail longer by accident. And then it's not going to line up with that end star in that final image, in that Milky Way image. So you have to kind of approach it from this side. You have to kind of work along the parallel. I wound up learning a few tricks, but that's another topic. So the other thing I think could be interesting to show is like some of the details with curves, like how to really finesse curves and your histogram to really eke out details. There's a lot of automated things like these multi-scale, histogram transformation tools. I don't use them because I don't know what I never can predict what they're going to do. If I try it, I generally don't like the results because it's like that isn't what it looks like. That's not what it's, so it's I tend to like having more control and just finessing it. And it's actually, once you get used to it, it's I think simpler than using those complicated tools that have 20 different parameters that if you don't get them set right, you don't know what output you're going to get. So in the old days when you used just Photoshop, that's all you had was really histogram and curves. That's how you stretched an image. You used those two tools and that was it. So I tend to revert back to that because I think it's easier and it's more predictable and you have more control. So that'll be for a future meeting if people are interested in something like that. So anyway, thank you, everyone.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you.
Great job.
Take care. Good.
Take care, everybody.
Good seeing everyone.
Okay.
See everybody
See ya.
Friday.
Bye.
Oh,
Night.
Oh yeah, bring them. You got the merch, right? Tom,
Yeah, I got the merch.
Yeah.
Luke,
Come and get it. I
Merch
will have to go.
master.
The fewer things I have to lug back, the better.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks
Yeah.
everyone for sharing your stuff and joining the meeting. Take care now.
Okay.